You know, I've been thinking a lot about Ed and Lorraine Warren lately. You probably know the names. They're like the first dynamic duo of American ghost hunting. We've got the Amityville Horror, the Perron family, that's the Conjuring movie, the Snedeker family, that's the Haunting in Connecticut movie, even Annabelle. If you've watched a horror movie in the past 10 years, their fingerprints are probably all over it. But here's the thing. I keep circling back to the question, were they legit? Were they really out there dealing with the demonic, or were they really good at playing a part? The stories are so good, and the way they approach the cases is great. It wasn't flashy. It was methodical, calm, almost pastoral, like a priest and a nun getting together in matching cardigans. I'm John Genoa. This is America's Strangest History. Let's talk about where their legitimacy starts to break down, because there are a lot of cracks, and they're not just small. First, the big one, Amityville.
Places like Amityville. If you gave me $1 billion, I wouldn't go in that house again.
In 1976, the Warrens investigated the Lutz family's infamous haunting in Amityville, New York. The Lutzes moved into a house where a man had murdered his entire family. They got a good deal on the house because of that. They fled 28 days later, claiming that the house was alive with evil. The Warrens showed up, declared the case to be demonic infestation, and it helped launch them into the spotlight. Great. Here's the problem. Years later, William Weber, a lawyer who represented the man who committed the murders, admitted he and the Lutzes fabricated a lot of the story to sell a book. And psychologists who reviewed the evidence said it didn't add up. Even some early investigators claimed that the whole thing was a hoax. So, were the Warrens duped? Were they in on it? Or did they just go in, feel something weird, and then run with it? Then there's the Snedeker case, the one that inspired The Haunting in Connecticut. We put out a video on it. Check it out if you get a chance. In the 80s, the Snedeker family moved into a house that used to be a funeral home. They claimed they were tormented by malevolent spirits, and of course the Warrens were called in. They declared it a demonic possession and helped co-write a book about it. But here's the thing. Ray Garton, the author hired to ghostwrite that book, later said he tried to organize the family's accounts and they didn't match. He told the publisher he couldn't write it as a non-fiction because it was all over the place. He claims he was told to just make it scary. That's a pretty big red flag, in my opinion. In fact, the Snedeker's landlord, the neighbors, and even former tenants all maintain it was a lie. Things always seemed to get worse whenever rent was due. Then there's the Southern werewolf case. This was in England. A man named Bill Ramsey claimed that he was possessed by a demonic werewolf spirit. The Warrens flew across the Atlantic, and they even held an exorcism in Connecticut. They declared the case genuine.
We flew to England, and we talked with Bill Ramsey. I talked and interviewed the police officers who were actually attacked by this man. He'd throw them around like they were kindling wood.
There's no physical evidence, no independent verification, and most experts see it as a case of psychological distress, possibly even epilepsy or dissociative identity disorder. But the Warrens? They said it was a werewolf demon. What do you think? Even Annabelle, the haunted doll. The original was just a Raggedy Ann doll. The Warrens claimed that it was possessed by an inhuman spirit. Nothing in the timeline of that case was ever publicly verified. The nurses who originally owned the doll, they never publicly confirmed the events. Skeptics say it was likely a case of embellishment, if not entirely invented. And yet, despite all this, despite the contradictions and the unverifiable details, I still can't quite write them off as complete fraudsters or hoaxers. Because here's the weird part. Across all these stories, whether you believe in the supernatural parts or not, people were scared, deeply scared in fact, traumatized in some cases. The Warrens didn't just show up and tell ghost stories, they gave people structure, ritual, language. Sometimes when you're lost in the dark, I suspect that's all you really need. Ed Warren once said, "The fairy tale is true. The devil exists. God exists. And for us as people, our very destiny hinges upon which one we elect to follow." That's not a guy looking for likes. That's a guy who believes he's fighting a spiritual war. But was it real? I don't know. I think, and this is just me talking here, I think the Warrens believe their own stories. Maybe they exaggerated or expounded on certain events. Maybe they shaped events to fit a spiritual narrative. Yes, possible. But I think that their intent was genuine, even if the facts weren't always airtight. They were storytellers. Maybe, just maybe, some of those stories weren't entirely fiction. Anyway, that's where my head's at right now. What do you think? Ed and Lorraine Warren, hoaxers, the real deal, or something in between? Drop me a line in the comments with your thoughts on this. I'd love to get your input on this dynamic duo of paranormal investigators. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking like and subscribe for more on my channel. Till next time, I'm John Genoa, and this is America's Strangest History. Thanks for watching.